Hey everyone, and welcome to another deep dive.
Yeah, great to be here.
Today we're looking at something super relevant, especially if you read research or work in academia.
Absolutely.
It's all about how we measure scholarly impact.
Right.
And, we asked you to send in some articles that you thought we should look at, and you sent us this fascinating research article
Yeah, this is a good one.
that challenges how much we rely on the journal impact factor,
Oh, yeah, the JIF.
the JAF exactly, to
Yeah,
evaluate
is
researchers.
a big one.
Yeah, and to evaluate their articles.
Yeah, for sure.
So, have you ever, judged an article based on what journal it's in?
I think we all have.
Yeah, right? I
Yeah.
think we all have. We've all been there.
Guilty as charged.
And so this deep dive might make you think a little bit differently about how we think about that and how we do that.
Yeah, for sure.
So maybe we'd start off by just explaining briefly what the JIF is and how it's calculated, and then we'll jump into some of the critiques of it.
Yeah, sounds good. So the JI, it's basically a measure of how often articles in a particular journal are cited by other researchers.
Right, so it's like a popularity contest for journals in a way.
Yeah, kind of like that.
Yeah.
It's like looking at how many times articles in that journal have been referenced or cited in other research papers over a specific period of time.
Okay, so it's a measure of influence,
Yeah,
essentially.
influence within the academic community, you could say.
Got it.
And the way they calculate it, it can get a bit technical, but essentially they take the number of citations a journal's articles receive and divide it by the number of articles the journal has published.
Okay, so it's like citations per article, basically.
Yeah, that's a simple way to put it, but yeah, you get the idea.
Yeah, it gives you a sense of how much buzz the average article from that journal is generating in the research world.
Exactly. And originally this JAF was actually meant for librarians.
Really?
Yeah, helping them decide, which journals to subscribe to.
Oh, that makes sense.
Because libraries have limited budgets.
Yeah.
So they want to make sure they're investing in journals that are actually being read and cited by researchers.
Right. They want the good stuff,
Yeah.
the stuff that people are actually using.
Exactly. The high impact journals, as they say.
But it seems like somewhere along the line, this tool for librarians morphed into this all-encompassing metric for evaluating researchers themselves.
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head. It wasn't designed for that, but it kind of took on a life of its own.
So the article argues that using a journal-level metric like the JIF to evaluate individual articles or researchers is like judging a fish by the size of the ocean it swims in.
Yeah, it's a brilliant analogy. I love that.
Right. It's like saying, well, this fish must be really impressive because it comes from the Pacific Ocean.
Exactly. It's a massive ocean, so all the fish in it must be huge and strong.
But that's obviously not how it works.
Nope, not at all. There are tiny fish in the Pacific, and there are massive fish in smaller lakes.
Exactly. So the size of the ocean doesn't tell us anything about the individual fish.
Right, and that's the whole point the article is making.
It's a classic example of what they call level of analysis confusion.
Yeah, we're mixing up the level of the journal with the level of the individual researcher or the individual article.
And that can lead to some pretty skewed conclusions.
For sure it can.
Okay, so we've got this problem of level of analysis confusion, but the article goes even deeper.
Oh, yeah, it does.
And they actually analyzed the distribution of citations for articles in top management journals.
Yeah, they looked at some of the big names in the field.
Like Academy of Management Journal,
Yep, class.
Organization Science,
Another heavyweight.
and Strategic Management Journal.
The holy trinity of management research.
Right. And what they found is pretty surprising.
It is. Yeah, so get this. They found that most articles, even in these top-tier journals,
Oh, wow.
get way fewer citations
Hmm.
than the journal's JI would suggest.
So you're telling me that even in these prestigious journals with their sky-high JAFs,
Yeah, even there.
the majority of articles aren't actually getting that many citations?
That's exactly what they found.
That's kind of shocking, isn't it?
Yeah, it is when you think about it.
Because you would assume that if a journal has a really high JIF,
Right, you'd think all the articles in it are superstars.
yeah, that all the articles published there are getting tons of citations.
But the reality is much more nuanced than that.
So what does this mean for researchers and for the way we evaluate research?
Well, it has some pretty significant implications.
Yeah, I bet.
I mean, think about it. If we're using the JIF as a proxy for the quality or impact of individual articles,
Right.
we're potentially overlooking a lot of really great research
Yeah, that's true.
just because it wasn't published in a super high JFF journal.
So we could be missing out on some groundbreaking work just because it didn't make it into the right journal.
Exactly. And on the flip side, we might be giving too much credit to articles that
Yeah.
happen to be published in a high JF journal.
Even if they're not actually that impactful.
Right. It's like getting a halo effect just from being associated with a prestigious journal.
So the JFF is kind of like a shortcut
Yeah. A misleading shortcut in many cases.
that we use to judge research without actually digging deeper.
And that can have real consequences for researchers, especially early career
Oh,
researchers
yeah?
who are trying to establish themselves in the field.
Yeah, because if your work isn't appearing in these top-tier journals,
Right.
it might be overlooked,
Even if it's excellent.
even if it's amazing research.
Exactly.
Oh, wait.
And that's a problem.
Yeah, a big problem.
Because it can create a system where researchers feel pressured to chase after these high JF journals,
Right.
even if it means compromising on the type of research they do or the questions they ask.
So imagine you're a junior faculty member.
Okay.
You're
Yeah.
super passionate about management education, let's say.
Yeah, a really important topic.
Yeah, but your work might not fit the mold of those high JF journals.
Right. They might be looking for something more quantitative or more focused on traditional management theory.
So what do?
Yeah, it's a tough choice.
You abandon your passion?
Right. Your area of expertise.
Yeah. Just to chase after this number, this JIF.
Yeah, it's a real dilemma, and it's not fair to researchers.
It's like saying you can only be successful in academia if you publish in these elite journals.
Yeah, and that's just not true.
There's so much valuable research happening outside of those journals.
Absolutely. And we need to find a way to recognize and value that work.
So the article is basically calling for a major rethink
Yeah, a paradigm shift.
of how we measure scholarly impact.
They're calling for a moratorium on using the JIF as the primary measure of individual impact.
A moratorium. Wow, that's a strong statement.
It is, but they make a compelling case.
So if not the JIF, then what? How do we measure impact in a way that's actually fair and accurate?
Well, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And that's where things get really interesting.
I'm all ears. I'm ready for the interesting part.
Me too. Let's dive in. So the article actually provides a whole table of alternative individual level metrics that can give us a much more nuanced view of impact.
So it's not just about ditching the JIF.
No, it's about finding better tools.
It's about using the right tool for the job.
Exactly. And one of the metrics they mention is the H-index.
Okay, I've heard of that one, but I'm not sure I totally understand it.
Yeah, it can be a bit tricky at first, but essentially it tries to capture both the quantity and quality of a researcher's work.
So it's not just about how many articles you've published.
No, it also takes into account how often those articles are cited.
So it's a more holistic approach than just looking at the journal where the research was published.
Exactly. It's looking at the researcher's entire body of work.
And their influence within the field.
Right, because at the end of the day, that's what we really care about, right?
Yeah, we want to know what kind of impact a researcher is having on their field and on the world.
And the H-index can give us a better sense of that than just looking at the JIF.
And then there's also altmetrics.
Oh yeah, altmetrics are super interesting.
They're kind of like the new kid on the block when it comes to measuring impact, right?
Yeah, they're definitely more recent than traditional citation-based metrics.
So what exactly are altmetrics?
Well, they go beyond just citations and look at things like downloads, social media shares, mentions in online discussions, even news coverage.
So it's about capturing the broader reach and influence of research beyond just the academic bubble.
Exactly. It's recognizing that impact can happen in many different ways.
And not just through citations in academic journals.
Right, because sometimes research can have a big impact on policy or practice.
Or on public understanding of an issue.
Exactly. And altmetrics can help us track those kinds of impact.
Okay, so we've got the H-index, we've got altmetrics. What other tools are out there?
Well, there's a whole bunch of other individual level metrics that we can use depending on what we're trying to measure.
So it's about being thoughtful and choosing the right tool for the job.
Absolutely. And the article really emphasizes that point.
It's not about finding one magic metric to replace the GIF.
No, it's about using a variety of measures to get a more complete picture of a researcher's impact.
And recognizing that impact can take many different forms.
Right, and the article goes even further than just individual researchers.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they actually challenge business schools
Oh.
to rethink their entire reward system.
Okay, now we're talking.
Yeah, this is where things get really interesting.
So they're not just saying, let's tweak the way we measure impact.
No, they're saying let's rethink the whole system.
Like the whole academic culture.
Exactly, because the overemphasis on the JF has created this publish or perish mentality
Oh, yeah, that's a real problem.
where researchers feel pressured to publish as many articles as possible.
Especially in those high JF journals.
Right, and that can lead to all sorts of problems.
Like cutting corners or doing research that's not really meaningful.
Exactly, it can stifle creativity and innovation.
So instead of just chasing publications in high JF journals,
Right.
we should be thinking about how to truly incentivize and reward a wider range of contributions.
Exactly. What if we valued teaching as much as research
Or mentoring, or community engagement.
or working with practitioners to solve real-world problems?
Those are all incredibly valuable contributions.
And they should be rewarded accordingly.
So the article is basically calling for a more holistic and equitable system.
Yeah, a system that recognizes and values the full range of scholarly contributions.
Instead of just focusing on this one narrow metric.
And that would be a huge shift for academia.
Yeah, a real paradigm shift.
But it's a shift that's long overdue.
I completely agree.
Because at the end of the day, we want to create a system that supports and rewards the best possible research and the best possible researchers.
Right, we want a system that encourages innovation and creativity.
And a system that truly benefits society.
And the JOF is just not doing that.
Nope. It's time for a change.
Okay, so we've talked about we've talked about some potential solutions.
Right, we're getting there.
But the article doesn't just talk about the GIF, right?
No, it actually goes beyond that.
Okay, so what else is on their hit list?
Well, they also talk about journalists.
Okay, like the FT50,
Particularly, that's one of them.
the UTD list,
Yep, another big one.
and the ABS list.
Those are some of the most influential journalists in the field.
And they're often used in hiring decisions and tenure evaluations.
Right, they can have a huge impact on a researcher's career.
So what's the problem with these lists?
Well, the problem is that they're often compiled based on, you guessed it.
Oh no, not the JF again.
Yep, the JIF is lurking behind the scenes.
We were back to that level of analysis confusion.
Exactly. We're using a journal-level metric to create lists that are then used to evaluate individual researchers.
It's like a vicious cycle.
And it can have real consequences.
Yeah, I bet.
Because it can lead to a situation where certain journals are considered prestigious simply because they have a high JI.
And then articles published in those journals
Right.
are automatically seen as more impactful.
Even if they're not actually any better than articles published in other journals.
It's a self-fulfilling prophecy.
It is, and it can create a really unfair system.
Especially for researchers who are working in fields
Right.
that aren't well represented in those top-ranked journals.
Exactly. Like if you're doing research on management education, you might have a harder time getting your work published in a top-ranked journal.
Just because those journals tend to focus on other areas.
And that's not fair to those researchers.
Or to the field as a whole.
Because we need a diversity of perspectives and approaches in research.
So the article is basically saying that these journal lists,
Right.
while they might be helpful in some ways,
Yeah, they can be useful for librarians and for getting a general sense of the field.
they can also be really problematic.
Especially when they're used to evaluate individual researchers.
Because they perpetuate this level of analysis confusion.
Exactly. And they can reinforce existing hierarchies and biases.
Okay, so this is getting pretty heavy.
Yeah, it is.
We've got the JIF, we've got journal lists.
Right. We're unpacking a lot of stuff here.
What other sacred cows are the authors taking aim at?
Well, they actually highlight a really interesting study.
Okay, I'm intrigued.
They looked at 81 highly influential management researchers.
Okay, like the superstars of the field.
Exactly. The rock stars of management research.
So these are researchers who've won awards and received all sorts of recognition.
Right. They're at the top of their game.
And what did they find?
Well, they found that even for these superstars, using the JIF to estimate their impact produced wildly inaccurate results.
You kidding?
Yep. Serious.
So even for the best of the best,
Even for them.
the JIF doesn't really tell us that much about their actual impact.
That's right. It can overestimate their impact or underestimate it.
Wow, that's really eye-opening.
Yeah, it is when you think about it.
It shows just how flawed this system can be.
Even when we're talking about the very top researchers in the field.
And if we're getting it wrong for them,
Right.
imagine the implications for everyone else.
Exactly. It's a sobering thought.
So this isn't just a theoretical debate?
No, it has real-world consequences.
For researchers, for the type of research that gets funded and published?
And ultimately for the impact that academia has on society.
So what do we do about it?
That's the big
It's
question.
a million-dollar question. And that's what we'll explore in the next part of our deep dive.
Yeah, it really does feel like we're at this crossroads in academia where we need to step back and really decide what matters most to us.
Yeah.
What do we really value?
Right.
Do we keep chasing these kind of artificial metrics like the JI?
Right.
Or do we try to create a system that actually supports and rewards all these other amazing things that researchers do?
Yeah, and it makes me think back to, you were saying earlier how the JIF was originally intended for librarians to help them make decisions about subscriptions.
Yeah.
And maybe it's time to Like, get back to basics.
Yeah.
And remember that research isn't just about citations and impact factors.
Totally agree. I mean, like, at its heart,
Yeah.
research is about curiosity.
Yeah.
About asking questions.
Exploring new ideas.
Yeah.
Pushing the boundaries of knowledge.
Absolutely. And it's about sharing that knowledge with others, too.
Yeah.
Whether it's through teaching, mentoring,
Writing.
engaging with the community. All those things are part of what makes research so valuable.
Right. And a truly effective way of evaluating scholarly impact needs to recognize and value all those different contributions.
Absolutely. So, what does this all mean for you, dear listener?
Yeah, that's a big question, right?
It means like asking yourself some tough questions like,
Yeah.
how do you define success in your own work?
Mm-hmm.
What are you most proud of?
Yeah.
And how can you make sure those contributions are recognized and valued, even if they don't fit into those traditional metrics?
And it also means being an advocate for change.
Yes, absolutely.
Like, talk to your colleagues, talk to your department chair, talk to your dean.
Yep, spread the word.
Let them know that you believe in a more holistic and equitable system for evaluating impact.
And don't wait for someone else to create that system.
Yeah.
You can start showcasing the full range of your contributions right now.
Right?
Highlight your teaching, your mentoring, your community engagement.
Tell your story.
Exactly. Share your successes.
And inspire others to do the same.
Yeah, make it a movement.
So we've covered a lot of ground today.
We have.
From the limitations of the JIF to the potential of these alternative metrics and these expertise-based career paths.
It's been a journey.
But we've only just scratched the surface.
Yeah, for sure.
This is a complex issue with no easy answers.
Absolutely. There's no magic formula.
Right.
No one-size-fits-all solution.
But by starting the conversation,
Yes.
by questioning assumptions, and by advocating for change,
we can create a better system.
a system that truly values the full range of scholarly contributions.
Exactly. We hope this deep dive has given you some new insights.
Yeah.
And maybe even sparked some new ideas.
We encourage you to keep exploring this important topic.
Yeah, keep thinking critically about how we measure success in academia.
Because remember, impact can take many forms.
It really can.
And a thriving academic community needs the contributions of everyone.
Not just a select few.
So thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
It's been a pleasure.
Until next time, keep seeking knowledge and challenging the status quo.